Hi YouTubers. Once upon a time there was a man who owned a large chain of jewellery shops called Rattners. Now he was a very successful man and it was a very successful chain of shops. But one day he decided to go onto the television in fact it was at a conference that was televised, and stand up and say to the public, I am so successful because I've basically sold you crap. Now, that was probably one of the biggest mistakes in business history. Within a week or two, people were saying, oh, look over there, that dog's doing a Rattner, or watch out, you're stepping that Rattner, or I'm just popping out the back to have a Rattner. You get the idea. It was business suicide, and to be honest, he's hardly been heard of since, except for the laughter that follows his name. We have now, of course, a new candidate, Dr. Rowan Williams, the Archbishop of Canterbury. Seems to have done the same thing, but this time in religious circles as opposed to business circles. Despite this recent outburst on commenting on Islam and embracing Sharia law, the Archbishop has managed to do more for an atheist cause than the Church of England has, in fact, for the last 50 years. You see, the problem is, when you get a Christian commenting on something that's Muslim, it's political suicide, basically. People who believe that their land of milk and honey is always going to be somebody else's land of lactose intolerance and bee stings. So you can't really be a Christian and start talking about a different religion or any religion and talking about another religion to the public. It just doesn't work. You have to really be an atheist to do that. And then you know what the opinion's going to be anyway, don't you? But there you go. He did it. Fabulous. I know that people have said it's been taken out of context, but I must admit I have listened on the radio. You can get it quite easily. I download it and listen to these speeches. And yes, I think it was a big mistake, and he really has made a faux pas. And listen to it yourself anyway if you need to. Okay, now I want to say a bit more about this, but bear with me a second. Now, according to many sources, that Dr. Rowan Williams is a very intelligent man. I keep hearing this all the time. I'm sure you all have. Not sure what they quite mean by it, but he's a man of great intelligence, and he likes people apparently who are clever. He likes other clever people. He fancies himself as a clever person as well. Now, this may seem a bit delusional now, but believe it or not, I think it is possible to be an archbishop and be clever. After all, you need to be an expert really in manipulation in order to get to that point. So you think that, well, really the only problem with that is when you get to the top, your intelligence becomes a curse, because you're not really required to have a great deal of intelligence to be an archbishop. I'm sorry to say, but I do feel that is true. You need to be an expert in manipulation and really endorse the dogma that you're not required in any way to question it. So, give you an idea. There must come a point when these people really do start questioning their beliefs. I believe that Mother Teresa did, for instance. She kept that very quiet. We know now later on what she's written since her death. She hasn't written it since her death, but since her death we've read what she's written, if you get the point. Dr. Williams, however, he seems to be constantly exploring and trying to come to terms with the fact that there are actually other religions, other religious dogmas around. If you see him with garlands of flowers around his neck when he's at a Hindu festival, or you'll see Next thing you'll see is with the Pope, who'll be kissing his hand. Next view you'll get with Islamic religious leaders. So he's always appearing in this light. And I think I'd be a bit disappointed with that if I was actually a member of the Church of England. Anyway, before we condemn him completely, I think you've got to look at what he said and say, is there any truth in what he said? Now, for instance, halal meat is something which the British government has pandered to and allows to happen. Now, for those that don't know, the halal meat it's a ritually slaughtered meat which has to die by having its throat slit, so the animal can watch its own blood pouring from it while it tries to gasp for breath and drowning in its own blood. Now, if that sounds horrible, well, I think it is horrible, but it is, of course, illegal to actually kill animals in that way, unless you're killing an animal for religious reasons, which I find torture in the name of religion very unpleasant. My opinion, I know, I'm sure that's a whole different subject, but in my opinion, I think that the law ought to forbid the sale of halal meat to non-Muslims, for instance, as they would have clearly be breaking the law. Or at least label the meat. You could label it something like, this meat was killed in a way that could be considered cruel by some people, and as such should really only be eaten by those of a religious nature. Possibly might work, or something a bit harsher would be nice. Anyway, I digress from the main point. If I was an Anglican, I think I said earlier, if I was an Anglican Christian, I'd be more than a bit miffed that a person that I was supposed to look up to and guide my every move into the dogma of my religion basically started talking about other religions and bits that you should respect as an alternative or endorse. If Richard Dawkins, Pat Condell, or say Nick Gisburn suddenly announced that they decided to give the Bible a good old reading again, and while they were reading it, they suddenly thought, well, that 3.5 billion years of evolution, it's rubbish, isn't it? What's really true is that in an afternoon, there must have been a creator that did it. Now, if they were told me that, I would be more than a bit upset with them. I would, of course, think they've gone mad, but there you go. I would be disappointed in them, and I think that Christians will no doubt be very disappointed in Dr. Rowan Williams. Okay, so next thing I'd like to comment on is the press. Now, the press and the way they've handled this. I don't know if you've actually watched much of the coverage, but you do see Muslims being asked questions, you do see other religious people being asked questions, you see politicians being asked questions, but never ever bring in an atheist and say, well, what's the atheist approach? What do you think? What all this religious stuff? Why don't you give an opinion? Well, you've got to remember that here in Britain, we are in fact the largest group, the largest citizen group is at least atheist and agnostic. I believe that sincerely. I think if you go out and ask most people, they'll go, they don't really want to talk about it. I hate religion, which really means they don't believe in it. So I think if you did a new test, you'll find that the largest group in Britain would be atheists. However, perhaps I'm going off a little bit on that. Another thing is, this man's opinion. Does it matter more than mine? There's an awful lot of fuss made about it, but why is his opinion so important in this, which is basically a political matter? It's no real meaning. He is an expert in some rather strange fields, in my opinion, which are, unless you've forgotten, ancient fiction, religious dogma, arrogant piety, brainwashing, crowd manipulation, mind control, bullying, destroying the very essence that makes you an individual, accumulating wealth through child indoctrination, etc., etc. You get the idea. But why would you go to this person for political guidance? You might as well ask him, what's the height of a gnome, or what colour is a fairy's wings? Just a bit of thought, anyway. And I hope there's been of some interest. Peace.